Imagine this, December 1098. A small Syrian town called Mayarat al-Numan. Walls broken. Crusaders, starving, furious men who walked 3 years from Europe, pour in. In a dark cellar, a mother named Yasmin hides with her 2 little girls. Above them, screams, doors smashing, families silenced forever. But what happened to the women who survived the first wave of killing? They weren't just killed. They were chosen, dragged out, evaluated like goods, raped, enslaved, sold in markets. For 900 years, Western history books skipped this part. They talked about brave knights and holy wars. But Arab writers wrote the truth, the horror in the shadows. Today, we finally tell their story. The censored fate of women in the Crusades. Stay with me. This is not the story you learned in school. The siege lasted 2 weeks. No big army inside, just merchants, farmers, families hiding behind weak walls. Crusaders were desperate. After Antioch's long starvation, they ate horses, leather, anything. Hunger turned them into something wild. When ladders finally reached the top in the dark night, they climbed over bodies. Boiling oil poured down, but wave after wave came. The walls cracked. Then the real horror began. Soldiers moved house to house. Doors smashed open. Men killed first. Then the search started: cellars, attics, every hiding spot. Young women were pulled out. Old ones often left or killed. Children complicated things. Some soldiers took mothers and left kids crying. Others killed the children to make it simple. It wasn't random chaos. It was selection. Youth meant value. Beauty meant higher price. Yasmin clutched her daughters, 9 and 6, under the floorboards. She heard boots above. Voices in strange Frankish language. The trapdoor opened. Light fell in. A man looked down. In seconds, he decided. Useful or not? Their fate hung on that glance. This was just the beginning. The women taken didn't vanish. They entered a system, claimed by knights, sold to merchants, carried south. Their story was buried. But not anymore. Before Mayarat, there was Antioch. 8 long months outside its massive walls. Crusaders starved, ate rats, boiled boots, watched friends die of sickness. When a traitor opened a gate at night, they rushed in like floodwater. The garrison fought, but soon the streets ran red. Killing spread from soldiers to civilians. Men cut down first. Then the real search began. Arab writers described it clearly: soldiers went house to house, pulling women from corners, from under beds, from behind curtains. Young girls and women were separated. Old women and grandmothers often left bleeding or dead. The selection was quick: a glance at face, body, age. A beautiful young woman had value. She could be kept, traded, sold. An old one? No profit. Knights took first choice, the best-looking, the youngest. Then sergeants, then common foot soldiers fought over leftovers. Women were listed with gold, horses, silk, same as any loot. Latin chronicles skipped this part. They wrote God gave us victory and moved on. But the women didn't vanish. They were dragged to the Crusader camp, used in tents, passed between men, some sold to merchants who followed the army like vultures. This was the blueprint. Antioch showed them how. Mayarat made it worse. The system was born here, and it would grow. After Mayarat, the Crusaders marched to Jerusalem. 5 weeks of siege. Then the northern wall broke. July 15, 1099, one of history's darkest days. Soldiers poured in shouting, "God wills it." What followed was slaughter on a scale that shocked even them. Latin priests wrote proudly, blood flowed to ankles in the Temple Mount. They waded through it, thanking God.
Arab writers like Ibn al-Athir said 70,000 died, maybe exaggerated, but the killing was total.
Men, old people, children, no mercy.
But again, the young women were pulled aside.
In the chaos of streets full of bodies, soldiers stopped.
They grabbed women from crowds being herded to death.
A mother with children? Sometimes both taken.
Sometimes the child killed so the mother was easier to handle.
Selection happened right there, amid screams and smoke. Youth and beauty decided life over death. Not kindness. Value. These women were claimed fast.
Nobles first, then knights, then the rest. They became part of the spoils, carried into the new Crusader kingdom. Some stayed in Jerusalem homes they once owned, now cleaning for killers.
Others sold in markets.
The Latin books called it glorious conquest.
The women's story? Erased.
But Arab pens kept writing. The truth waited 900 years.
After Jerusalem fell in 1099, the Crusaders didn't just leave. They stayed. They built kingdoms: Jerusalem, Antioch, Tripoli, Edessa.
They needed rules for this new land.
So they wrote laws, the Assizes of Jerusalem. These weren't just about land or taxes. They included captured people. Muslim civilians taken in war became property. Women especially.
The law said they could be owned, sold, given as gifts, even passed to sons like furniture or horses.
No difference in the legal words.
A knight who seized a woman during a sack had a legal right to her.
If two men fought over who got her, courts decided, the same courts that judged land disputes. This wasn't hidden shame. It was official.
Knights and lords got the best captives first, young, healthy women who could work or serve in other ways.
Common soldiers got what was left.
Some women stayed in houses they once lived in, now scrubbing floors for the men who killed their families. Others were sold in open markets in Acre and Tyre.
Latin chronicles never wrote about these laws in detail.
They focused on battles and kings. But the system was real. It turned horror into everyday business.
And for the women inside it? No escape. No rights. Just silence that lasted centuries.
Acre became the Crusader port of riches.
Ships from Venice, Genoa, Pisa docked daily. Goods flowed: spices, silk, gold. And humans.
Slave markets stood in the open, near the harbor.
Not secret alleys, public squares with tax collectors watching. Every sale paid duty to the kingdom.
Women captured in sieges or raids were brought here. A soldier who didn't want to keep his share sold her for cash.
Merchants bought low, sold high.
Buyers came from everywhere, local lords needing servants, Italian traders shipping to Europe, even some Muslim merchants in neutral ports. Women were lined up, examined like livestock: age, strength, looks. A young Levantine woman fetched high prices.
Bills of sale survive in Genoa and Venice archives.
They list her like cargo: one Saracen girl, about 18, healthy.
Once sold, she vanished into a new life.
Maybe a Frankish household in Acre, cooking in a kitchen that used to be hers. Maybe shipped across the sea to Italy or Sicily, never seeing home again.
Her name? Gone. Her story? Not written.
Arab writers saw these markets and wrote with anger.
Western ones? Almost nothing.
They called it commerce.
The women called it hell.
And for 900 years, most people never heard their side.
While Latin chroniclers celebrated victories and skipped the dark parts, Arab historians wrote everything. They had no reason to hide.
Their cities were burning, their people taken. Men like Ibn al-Athir, from Mosul, described the sacks with cold precision. He wrote of women dragged from homes in Jerusalem, separated from dying families, eyes wide with terror. No mercy for age or beauty, only calculation.
Usama ibn Munqidh, an Arab noble who visited Crusader lands, saw Muslim women in Frankish houses.
They cooked, cleaned, served, silent slaves in homes that once belonged to their kin. He called it what it was: bondage. No freedom, no family contact, no faith openly practiced. Another writer, Imad ad-Din, told of women sold in markets, their bodies priced like cloth.
These weren't rumors. Survivors spoke.
Refugees fled to Damascus and Cairo, told their stories to scribes. Court records from the time show women begging for news of lost children, pleading for ransom. Poetry from the era carries their grief, short, sharp lines about mothers torn from daughters, homes turned to prisons.
For 900 years, these Arabic words sat in libraries, untranslated, unread in the West. They waited.
Latin books shaped school lessons. Arab books held the truth the other side erased.
The horror wasn't only Crusader cruelty.
War cuts both ways. When Muslim armies struck back, Frankish women suffered the same fate.
In 1144, Edessa fell to Zengi.
The first major Crusader city lost.
Civilians who didn't flee became captives. Women and girls pulled from homes, separated from husbands and brothers. Some sold, some taken as concubines or servants.
Chroniclers on both sides noted it plainly.
Saladin's victories in the 1180s brought the biggest hauls.
After Hattin in 1187, thousands of Frankish civilians, including many women, fell into his hands.
Saladin was different.
He allowed ransoms, freed some women and children for free, punished men who mistreated captives. His secretary wrote of these acts with pride.
But not every commander was like Saladin.
When Baybars crushed Antioch in 1268, the sack was savage.
Frankish women dragged away, families broken, sold or enslaved.
Crusader sources screamed in horror, the same horror Arab sources felt 170 years earlier at Jerusalem.
The pattern was the same: walls fall, selection begins, women become property. Religion didn't matter. Power did. A Frankish woman in a Muslim camp felt the same terror as a Muslim woman in a Crusader tent.
Both sides built systems to use captives. Both sides wrote only their own pain.
The women shared the silence. The Crusades were supposed to be holy war against Muslims.
But in 1204, the mask fell off completely.
The Fourth Crusade never reached Egypt.
Instead, Crusaders, backed by greedy Venetian merchants, turned on Constantinople, the greatest Christian city in the world. The Byzantine Empire was Orthodox, not Catholic, but that didn't matter. They were rich. They were weak. So the crossbearers attacked their fellow Christians.
The city walls fell after a brutal siege. Soldiers poured in like locusts. Nicetas Choniates, a Byzantine eyewitness, wrote in rage and grief: churches looted, altars smashed, sacred relics stolen. Nuns dragged from convents. Wives pulled from noble homes.
Women hiding in sanctuaries, believing no Christian would violate God's house, were wrong. Crusaders raped them on altars, in streets, in their own beds. Young girls, married women, elderly matrons, no difference when power was absolute. The selection was the same as in Muslim cities: beauty and youth decided who lived as captive instead of dying. Knights and Venetian financiers claimed the prettiest first.
Common soldiers took the rest. Women were distributed like gold and silk. Some sold in the city's markets, others shipped to Italy. These were Christian women, praying the same prayers, believing in the same God the Crusaders claimed to serve. Yet they suffered exactly like the Muslim women of Jerusalem or Antioch. Latin chroniclers barely mentioned it. Some called it regrettable excess. Most skipped the women entirely. Arab writers, watching from afar, saw the irony: the defenders of Christ devouring their own. This sack proved the truth: the horror wasn't about religion. It was about conquest, greed, and what happens when an army believes everything inside a fallen city belongs to them.
Women, any women, were just part of the prize. For 9 centuries, the women's story stayed buried. Latin chroniclers wrote for popes, kings, and future generations. They needed heroes, miracles, God's favor. So they wrote of battles won, cities taken, sins forgiven. Rape, enslavement, markets full of crying women? Those details didn't fit. They were left out, not lied about, just never mentioned. One omission made the next easier. Soon it became tradition. European historians from the Renaissance to the 19th century read only those Latin books. Arabic manuscripts sat locked in libraries in Damascus, Cairo, Istanbul, in a language most Western scholars couldn't read. No one bothered to translate them widely. Why would they? The Crusades were a proud chapter in Christian history. Digging into Arab accounts might ruin the story. Only in the 19th and 20th centuries did translations begin. Scholars finally read Ibn al-Athir, Usama ibn Munqidh, Imad ad-Din. They saw the other side, detailed accounts of women pulled from cellars, sold like cattle, forced into lives of silent labor or worse. The picture changed, but slowly. Academic books included it. Textbooks? Not so much. Schools still taught knights, Jerusalem, Saladin, the clean version. Even today, popular movies and books romanticize the Crusades, shining armor, epic clashes. The cellars, the markets, the mothers holding terrified children? Rarely shown. The silence wasn't a conspiracy. It was easier. Each generation inherited the gaps and passed them on. No effort needed. Just don't look. But the evidence never disappeared. Arab poetry whispers grief. Court records beg for lost daughters. Survivors' words survived in margins. They waited 900 years for someone to listen. Now we are listening. Yasmin in her cellar, the girls in Jerusalem, the nuns in Constantinople, their names may be lost, but their suffering echoes. It's time the world hears what history tried to forget. We began in a dark cellar in Ma'arat al-Numan. Yasmin holding her daughters tight, 9 and 6, as boots thumped above. The trapdoor opened. Light stabbed in. A stranger looked down and decided in seconds, useful or not. That glance ended one life and began another kind of nightmare. Multiply her by thousands. By Antioch, Jerusalem, Acre, Constantinople. By every wall that fell across 2 bloody centuries. These women were not footnotes. They were mothers, daughters, wives, dreamers. They cooked bread, sang lullabies, prayed in quiet corners. Then soldiers came, believing God gave them permission, and turned them into property. Claimed. Used. Sold. Erased from the story the victors told. For 900 years, the Latin pages celebrated swords and crosses. Arab pages, hidden in other languages, carried the grief. Survivors whispered to scribes. Poets hid pain in verses. Court papers begged for lost names. All of it waited. Waited for translation. Waited for ears willing to hear. Waited for us. Now we know. The Crusades were not just knights riding to glory. They were cellars full of terror. Markets where girls were priced. Homes where familiar walls became prisons. And the silence around it? That was the longest violence of all. Yasmin never got a chronicle. Her daughters' names are dust. But their story is ours now. It asks, what do we do when history lies by omission? We speak it. We share it. We refuse the clean version. If this moved you, if it changed how you see the past, hit subscribe. Share this series. Comment below, which part hit you hardest? Where are you watching from? Because these women belong to no single side. Their pain belongs to every generation that chooses truth over comfort.
9 centuries is long enough. The waiting ends here.